9/11.
Something being an inside job. It was a ringside rob.
What'd you say?
That's a what show is that? The Eric Andre show. Either you ever watched that?
Yeah, I've seen some clips. I haven't watched
Mayhem.
I do like Eric Andre.
Eric Andre's hilarious. Hannibal Buress.
I like when he's on Practical Jokers. I think he's actually really funny on there.
I've never seen it, but I kind of feel like it's selling out by Eric Andre to do stuff like that.
Still pretty funny.
I'm sure it is. He's hilarious.
Not as good as Joe.
Joe is very funny. I hate that show, but I used to think it was funny. Now I watch it and I want to
I haven't watched it in years, but I used to have like an addiction to
rip my eye full. So. But I definitely used to think it was funny.
Homecoming WWE.
If it's gonna happen, they need to make it happen.
In Chicago with Survivor Series. Can you imagine?
It would be unreal.
Can you imagine? Will that get you back in?
I'm back. I'm not out. It's just right now. It's like I'll be back in for Survivor Series. Yeah. Do you want to get Dancing on My Own ready? I might ask you to play it. I forgot. I should have told you that.
I got it.
Because I'm gonna open the fills real quick, like jab on the fills, and then talk about would we rather Marlins D-backs probably just for like a minute, and then I'll get to college football pretty fast.
Brother.
All right, this is really.
Whenever you're ready, turn your mic on. You too, Sean.
Got it.
And Gandhi. Hello and welcome to the Tough Cover Radio Show. I am your host, as always, Mark Henry Jr. My co-host over there, Sean Barnard. You can follow Sean on Twitter at Sean_Bernard. One, right?
Yep.
One in there, right? I
You got it.
forget. Sean_Bernard1. You follow me on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. You get involved in the conversation on at Fox PHL Gambler. We are streaming on iHeartRadio. We're streaming on Twitter on Fox PHL Gambler.
YouTube.
And we back
Everywhere.
on YouTube. And we back, as my the guy on my hat would say. We're back. YouTube.
Yeah, been a battle. Battle is won. We're back putting out some awesome content on YouTube, so that's going to be back flowing in full form starting today and all through hopefully from forever from now on. So excited to be back on there and plenty big plans in the works.
We got plenty to talk about today. College football. People are already yelling at me on Twitter to get the card out, so I got it out early. We got an NFL card, full card that I love, by the way. Love the NFL card tomorrow. My favorite of the year so far. I am pumped. Most plays I've had on the NFL slate all year long. We got obviously a little NBA slop to talk about, and there's no one better to bring on than TrillBro Dude. So he's coming on at 12 o'clock to talk about slop. We're going to slop him up. We're going to talk about Dame. We're going to talk about Drew. We're going to talk about all that stuff, all what it means for the Sixers, what it means for the NBA as a whole. But I'd be remiss. I know it was a couple nights ago. I'd be remiss to start anywhere else, but right here in the city of brotherly love. Jeremy, get that music ready. We're right back.
Absolutely.
Red October is back once again. They clinched, what was it, Tuesday, Wednesday? I was at the game. It was an absolutely awesome thing to be there for. I was at the clincher, the NLDS last year. So I think this is only the second clinching type of thing I've ever been at. It was a lot of fun to see. And I got to tell you, as soon as they put on Dancing on My Own after the games, I've been to a lot of games this year. They don't do that in the regular season. When they put this song on, goosebumps all over. I mean, some people out there want to say, like, they can't use it. They lost last year. You know, take the dump out of your pants.
Get out
brother.
of here.
Take the dump out of your pants. It's a fun song.
Have fun.
It was a blast to
Stop
be there
being
singing
boring.
it. It's great that they have this. Like, and I didn't watch the video yearbook all year long, the 2022 video yearbook, because I couldn't. It was too tough for me. I knew how it ended. They made it to the playoffs, and this week I was like, all right, I have hope. I'm going to go back and watch it. You go back and watch how this city stepped up last year in the playoffs and how the Phillies became the story in sports, like the story, at least in Philadelphia. The Eagles were going undefeated No one cared. None of the radio shows were talking about the Eagles beating the Texans and being 7-0. It was a story, but everyone was focused on what the Phillies were doing, how unprepared we were for what they were going to do. I think the crowd's going to be even better this year with how prepped they've been. This whole year has been building towards this. I mean, if you're the Arizona Diamondbacks, if you're the Miami Marlins, we can argue about who we'd rather see. I think that's terrifying to walk into this bank.
Yeah, it does not matter to me who it is. That regardless of who is entering Citizens Bank Park this postseason, I'm not scared of them. Whether it's the Diamondbacks, whether it's the Marlins, and this team is just so fun, dude. Like that whole moment, this song's grown on me a ton, just as what a banger it is and has become. But just Garrett Stubbs, the way he's celebrating with the Azul, all these guys getting down. Then Stubbsy hitting a home run the next day was awesome. Everyone on this team is so likable that it's like it's an infectious group that is why they're the story. That when you look around at the teams in Philadelphia and they're all beloved, this Phillies team just has something special when it comes to the mix of personalities and like as a group, their personality.
This is my favorite group of guys of my adulthood. Like I just love this team so much, and I want a title for them more than I've ever wanted a title for any group of guys, because I've wanted the process to be vindicated. That's almost like a different thing. And now it feels like even if they win eventually, I don't even know if it'll be that connected to that. So now at this point, like this is that important to me that this group of guys gets to experience what we've seen in 2008 and what the old heads saw in 1980 with their groups of guys that, culminated in a title. And I want it so badly for this team. We're both on the side of, was that KG at the Colorado game?
Kevin Garnett. Everyone.
Wow,
the
Paul
baby
Pierce
spoke to the team today. It is like a full out just celebrity runway in Colorado at this point. Wow. You know what I was thinking about also? How much would it suck if you graduated from Colorado last year?
I know.
How much would that suck just watching all this happen? It's like that was
or if you got forced to transfer.
yeah. Or that's rough.
Yeah, it's definitely rough all around there for those people. But yeah, I mean, we're both on the side of Diamondbacks, Marlins. Give me the tired Diamondbacks. Give me the Marlins. I don't care, right? Is Jeremy afraid of either one of them more than the other?
No, I mean, the only reason why I wouldn't be as afraid of Diamondbacks anymore is because Merrill Kelly and
Zach Gallen.
Yeah, Zach Gallen. Both of them are not going to be able to have normal rest by the time of game 1 and 2.
Huge
of the wild card series. So either way, I'm fine with it. I'm not afraid at all. I think we're going straight to the division series.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. Pat McAfee threw up between segments on College Game Day, and Schefter just tweeted it out like a breaking news story.
Look at him. He looks horrible. He's just like, he looks like he's holding something back.
It's flu game. He's playing through pain. Like, I respect it. Apparently, food poisoning, Schefter mentions.
All right.
That's no joke. Food poisoning
that's a good way
no joke. Yeah.
That's a good way to transition over to college football. A little McAfee throwing up at halftime of College Game Day.
No puking in the iHeart studios.
No, absolutely not.
Please,
we got strong stomachs in here.
Yeah, that's right.
Strong stomachs.
That is what we're known for.
Yeah. Let's get it started. I've got 10 plays on the board today, and I've already tweeted it out. People were ravenous. They needed it early, but I tweeted it on the stream. So let's get it started. Oh, I was about to just give up my picks. I didn't even. Let's get ready to gamble. All right, let's get it started. 12 o'clock, noon. We got 3 plays on the noon slate. On Brace is on all of the same plays that I'm on at noon. I don't know how. Should I feel good about that? Should I feel worried about that?
Little 50-50 there. 50-50. I don't know.
He's a smart guy, Sean Brace.
Yeah, he is.
So maybe he's sharp today. Maybe he woke up, he got his coffee, he's seeing the board. Maybe he did what Mad Dog talked about a week or 2 ago on First Take. We'll have to ask Sean Brace. Yeah, split it, take the first part. Yeah. Let's get it started though with my favorite play of the 12 o'clock slate. My second favorite play of the day, probably. It's right there. It's almost tied with my other one. But I'm going with the Kentucky Wildcats. Give me the money line versus Florida. This is a Mark Stoops legacy bet. Kentucky head coach Mark Stoops 9-4 against the spread, 69.2% as a small home favorite of less than 4 points at Kentucky, covering by an average margin of 6 points per game. The Wildcats have won and covered 2 straight in this series and are 5-1 against the spread in the past 6 against Florida. They've won 3 of the last 5 against Florida after losing 31 straight before that. Mark Stoops has changed the culture at Kentucky. It's not just Calipari's basketball school anymore. They win 8-9 games almost every year now in football. If they win this game, it would be just their second 5-0 start in or it would be their second 5-0 start in 3 seasons, but just their 5th in the past 75 seasons. The most success they've had as a program is under Mark Stoops, and I think they continue that today. While the Florida offense has lacked explosiveness, ranking 121st in that offense or in that department, Kentucky's offense ranks number 1 in the country in that department. So I know that they haven't played a great schedule. I think the explosive plays are going to be huge for Kentucky compared to Florida, which also spells bad news for a Florida defense that ranks dead last among the 133 FBS teams in stopping explosive plays. They're good at stuffing the run. They're good at stuffing short passes, but they give up a lot deep, the Florida defense. I think Kentucky takes advantage of that today, whereas I don't think Kentucky's offense has to be that consistent throughout the game just because they will be able to make a couple big plays, which will be able to narrow that gap. The line would be bigger, but they have a home win over a Tennessee team that I don't think that highly of. Like, Florida's going to get a lot of credit for beating Tennessee. Tennessee might not be very good, and I'll talk about that on one of my picks a little later on. But there's a reason why Florida sits at 116th nationally in third down conversion percentage. I know Graham Mertz's stats look pretty good. He's not the guy, and I think that shows against the Kentucky defense and a Mark Stoops coach team. Florida's been impressive. They've been way more impressive than I expected. They're still 1-3 against the spread, though. So I expect Kentucky to win here. I have Kentucky money line in that game. You have any thoughts on that one?
Nothing fully on that one. I mostly lean towards what you're saying, but that's a game that I am staying away from. I will say there's a lot of the board today that I'm not as comfortable in. This is a week that I'm not seeing the board as well as I feel I'd have in others. So there's a lot of games that I chose to pass on or even dig into some of, I guess, the less appealing from a fandom standpoint, but more appealing from the betting standpoint for me.
And yeah, this is a scary week in college football.
Yeah.
I love the NFL board. I'm a little scared of the college board. It was the exact opposite for me last week. I was scared of the NFL board and loved the college board. By the way, did absolutely phenomenal in both. No need to toot my own horn, but toot. I'm 44-21 over the last 4 Saturdays.
It's ridiculous.
44-21 at plus 57.5 units on Saturdays. We are 143, 114, and 6 at plus 122.5 units over the last 6 weeks.
Wow.
34-18 at plus 56 units so far in college football. 32, 25, and 2 at plus 25 units in the NFL.
Wow.
In the MLB, 77, 71, and 4 at plus 41.5 units in the last 6 weeks. But, thanks to Bryce and Trey, props for that. Let's move on to the next one. We're staying in this neck of the woods. We got some fans listening, I'm sure. So let's talk about the Penn State Nittany Lions, who seem to be a permanent installment on my card every week. I think I've bet them every game they've played. Give me the minus 26. I think it might be up to 27 maybe now. I'd still take it. Yeah. The Nittany Lions are on a 10-0-1 spread run here. James Franklin knows the spread. We know that now.
Yes.
So that's definitely a factor. They've scored 30 or more points in 11 straight games. They've scored 5 consecutive games, or they've covered 5 consecutive games since the start of last season, tied with Liberty and Oklahoma for the longest active cover streak in FBS. They're 5-0 against the spread as a road favorite since the start of last season. 8-2-1 against total defense, turnover margin, time of possession. They're top 5 and a bunch of other defensive stuff, led by one of the best running back duos in the country in Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. Penn State's second in the Big Ten in rushing at 210 yards per game. Northwestern giving up a league worst 184.5 yards rushing on average. I think this is a terrible matchup for Northwestern. James Franklin was practicing this week with no music because he expects it to be that empty at Northwestern. I agree with them. I think it's going to be a sleepy game. I think Penn State absolutely blows them out. And I'll just say right now, I'm planting my flag. It's tough to evaluate what Georgia is right now. So take Georgia out of the conversation because it's almost unfair to consider them. They should be the favorite, and they are. Penn State's the best team in the country. That's not the Georgia Bulldogs.
Wow.
I feel pretty confident in saying that. I think if I had to make a pick to win the national championship right now that wasn't Georgia, I think it would be Penn State. They look that good on defense. They have the two-headed monster at running back. They have a phenomenal offensive line. And you obviously have Drew Aller, who looks like the best quarterback they've had in a long time.
Do you believe in Drew Aller as not? He's definitely the best quarterback Penn State has had in a long time. Is he? Where do you rank him, I guess, on the sphere of college football?
We're going to find out.
Yeah.
We're going to find out, but I think he's probably top 25. Like,
Okay, that's fair.
He's probably not top 5, top 10
Yeah,
yet because there's so many good quarterbacks this year. But I think the rest of that team is so good that if he's just a top 20 quarterback or a top 25 quarterback, they can really compete. And if he develops throughout the rest of this year into being a top 15 quarterback, they are the best team in the country, maybe even above Georgia.
Okay, I think that's fair. I was pretty high on Drew Aller coming into this year. Shout out Ryan Coyle, the Beef Up Front podcast. Put some flames to those.
Is he a Penn State guy?
He's not. He's a Drew Aller guy. That he believed in Drew Aller.
Me too.
Yeah. Does
he have a team? I haven't had Ryan on. We have to have him on the show sometime. What?
For some reason, I feel like he has some sort of Notre Dame ties as well.
Really?
He's a little all over the place, though. I don't think he has a firm college football team specifically.
Everyone check out Beef Up Front.
Yeah, absolutely. But for Drew Aller specifically, I don't want to say I'm underwhelmed. I think it's more in the comparison of how many great quarterbacks there are and how much great quarterback play there is around college football.
Yeah.
But he hasn't quite captured my eye in the way that I think I've hoped to at this point. That I still have questions. Is he the guy that can lead a program to a national championship in that way? You said it right, though. We're going to find out that this is the stretch where after this week, it's obviously not a concern this week against Northwestern. The 27 points is a lot, but I do lean that they do cover that. The defense is what sells it for me for Penn State, is that they are legit. They have some legit pieces there. I think that's going to hold things. I think Northwestern's not going to score at all, but I'm watching a careful eye over Drew Aller moving forward.
So you seemed a little skeptical by my proclamation there on Penn State.
Yeah.
So who do you think's better than them right now? Because I know they're ranked like 6 or 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you think Michigan? You feel better about Michigan right now? I think Aller's better than McCarthy.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that right now.
Honestly, Florida State is a team. I know they have not played their best football, but I like Florida State a lot. I think that's a team that I'm buying into as a legitimate title contender.
Washington and USC are right there too. It's just Pac-12 is so good.
Right.
Oregon's that good too. Like, it's hard for me to pick a Pac-12 team because it's gonna be mayhem.
Washington, I'm very intrigued to see against the better teams too, because they've looked unbelievable, but they really haven't played anybody yet, and they're putting up just unreal amount of points. Michael Penix is unbelievable there, so we'll see what happens. I'm keeping the door open on Washington as a legit contender as well.
They've got NFL talent.
Yeah.
They've got Roma Dunze outside. Penix is an NFL guy, but Roma Dunze at wide receiver is going to be a first-round pick. Braylon Trice is an edge rusher for them. He's going to be a first-round pick. They've got guys who are going to go early in the draft on the offensive line. Like, it's not just this like Pac-12 Penix, air raid, run and gun, beating bad teams thing. Washington's legit and they're here to stay. Does that mean they'll make the playoff? Does that mean they'll be able to make it through maybe the best Pac-12 of all time unscathed? I don't know. But maybe I'm going too far on Penn State, but I think Penn State and Florida State would be the two teams I'd look at. I think Penn State's got a little more dudes than Florida State in terms of NFL dudes for like the coming years, but we'll see. Florida State's probably got a better coach. One more game I'll hit on at noon here. Give me the orange. I'm betting against Clemson for the 5th straight time out of 5 games. Give me Syracuse plus 7.5. The last time Clemson took their second loss early, they failed to cover the next 3 and lost 1 outright. The Tigers have not covered 3 straight against Syracuse and are 1-5 against the spread in their past 6 against Syracuse. Syracuse is 7-2 against the spread in the last 9 in this matchup. Listen to this stat. Clemson has given up 36 points on turnovers in 2023. Compared to 38 in 14 games last season. DJ Uiagalelei deserves some apologies. I've been saying it since last year. It was not DJ's fault. Clemson's 0-2 in the ACC for the first time since 2010. When Cade Klubnik has a clean pocket, he's putting up an 82 PFF passing grade. He averages 8 yards per attempt, 8 touchdowns compared to 0 interceptions. The problem? When he's under pressure, the PFF grade drops to 34, which is worse in the country when pressured with a certain amount of passes thrown. His yards per attempt mark drops to 3.9, and he's committed 6 turnover-worthy plays. He just can't handle any sort of pressure at all, and the offensive line isn't what it used to be at Clemson. Unlike Klubnik on the other side, Garrett Schrader has really stepped up for Syracuse. He can actually throw under pressure. On 27.6% of his dropbacks where he's under pressure, he's averaging 14 yards per attempt, which is the best mark in college football for quarterbacks who have over 100 dropbacks this season. That's going to be necessary against a still good Clemson defensive line. I think he can handle the pressure from Clemson's defensive line. Give me Syracuse. They're 13-2-1 against the spread in its first 6 games of the season since 2021. Syracuse, a notorious fast starter, and Dino Babers teams get worse down the stretch. I think they win this game. I think this is like a we're here moment for Syracuse. Like, it'll be a big moment. I don't think it'll be as impressive as it as we think it is, because I don't think Clemson's that good.
Yeah.
So I think Syracuse covers, and I think they win the game.
Do you think we're sticking a fork in Clemson for the season? They're done. That's kind of what I agree with. It's interesting because you look at the losses; they're not bad. They lost to Tennessee 31-14. Tennessee's obviously very good. Or I'm sorry, they lost.
That's last year.
Yeah, I'm sorry. They lost to Duke 28-7. That has aged far better than I think most expected. Now that Duke has become legit, that was kind of a statement when it happened. That when we saw the Duke win, I don't think anybody expected Duke to take the leaps that they really have. And today they have an opportunity to take that even further if they can get a result. The loss to Florida State also doesn't concern me in overtime, 31-24. But they've beaten Florida Atlantic, and Charleston Southern. So I think that they kind of need this result. This is a must-win for Clemson. But I think regardless that this is a team that doesn't quite have it. It hasn't looked quite right. And there's just not that like burst or jazz that I feel like a Clemson team typically has. They're just kind of a boring football team that's not quite good enough.
Yeah, I think they'll be like 8-4,
yeah,
7-5. Like I think they'll probably lose to Notre Dame in a couple weeks. I think they're maybe going to lose today, and I think they could lose to Miami when they play Miami. I don't know if they play North Carolina, but they have a tough schedule remaining. It's not like they just have a bunch of cupcakes. I don't see Clemson just figuring it out with Cade Klubnik. Maybe if they went to a backup and I don't even know who their backup is, to be honest. But let's move on to the next game. This is a big game. Texas, number 3 in the country. I'm going against them. I'm all aboard the Kansas Jayhawks. I got this line early. I got it at 17.5. I also sprinkled a unit on the money line, but this is my best bet. Kansas plus 17.5, 5 units. I sprinkled 1 unit on plus 675 on the money line. That's down to like plus 550. Kansas is down to 16.5 or 16, depending where you're looking. But I would take that still. I've been drinking the Kansas Kool-Aid since last year. I believe fully in Lance Leipold and Jalen Daniels. They returned the most production in the country. The Kansas rushing attack is one of the most dynamic in the country, and it was last year. They're averaging over 5 yards per rush attempt. They're ranked 24th in rushing success rate. Devin Neal had 1,000 yards last year. He already has 400 yards. He's forced 24 missed tackles, averaging 3.5 yards per rush after contact. He's averaging 100 yards per game, an impressive 7 yards per carry, and has 5 touchdowns. He's been unreal. And that's not to mention the best player on their offense, Jalen Daniels, who's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's top 10. If I was making a list of my quarterbacks, Jalen Daniels would be on that top 10. Last year, he led the country in EPA per pass. That has continued into this season. He was the number 1 graded PFF passer last year. He is the number 1 PFF graded passer again this season. He's the best quarterback Texas has faced this year. I understand they beat Alabama. Alabama's got a quarterback issue. Yeah. If Alabama had Jalen Daniels, Alabama would have won that game. I'll just be quite honest about that. Kansas ranks 3rd in passing success rate and is once again top 10 in EPA per pass. Opponents have had some success throwing against Texas. They rank 67th in passing success rate allowed and 78th in EPA per pass allowed. Wyoming was able to pass the ball well on Texas. Kansas is a much better passing attack than Wyoming. Kansas is 4-0 against the spread against AP-ranked opponents since the start of the 2018 season. Not to mention, Kansas has covered 5 of its last 6 games against Texas. They've been a thorn in the Texas side and even beat Texas in 2021 in Leipold and Daniels' first year. In a year they went 2-10. The year before that, even pre-Leipold, they lost by 2. It's not like Kansas has played nobodies. They handled Illinois. They handled BYU with very little issue. They covered both games. Those are solid football teams. I am putting the Texas Longhorns on upset alert.
Wow.
Kansas can win this game, but they will cover the number.
Dude, what is that? What is happening with these basketball schools taking over the College 25? We got Kansas and Duke in there. What is this, March?
Kentucky is one of my plays today.
Kentucky
They're 4-0. Louisville went 5-0
What is happening? It feels like March already.
Not Michigan State, though.
Yeah. But I do agree. I think the 17.5 is far too big for 2 ranked teams here. That number has dropped to 16. I mostly agree with what you said there. I will say Quinn Ewers has opened my eyes. He was a guy that I came in more skeptical of when I talk about the quarterback play, and he has proved some stuff to me this year that he's looked very solid, very good, better than I had imagined him at and remembered him as from last year. So I'm happy to see him taking those steps forward. I'm not counting out Texas as being a legit title contender. I think this is going to be a week where they're going to have to scrap for it a little bit, and I just think that number is too high. But I do think Texas gets the win outright and stays undefeated.
And I forgot to mention my favorite reason. I can't believe I just buried the lead. I forgot to mention my favorite reason I like the bet. Do you know who Texas plays next week?
Who's that?
Oklahoma. They play in the Red River Shootout, their biggest game of the year, their rivalry game.
A little look ahead.
At the Texas State Fair. This is the ultimate look ahead here for the Texas-Oklahoma rivalry. You can make the argument, too, with Oklahoma, who's playing Iowa State. I just think Iowa State stinks, so I can't make that bet. But This is Kansas. This is the Kansas Super Bowl. Whereas for Texas, this is a look-ahead game. So I do really, really love this. And by the way, you mentioned being impressed with Quinn Ewers.
Yeah.
That goes with my next bet. I'll take the over here as well at 61. I think it's at 61.5. I would take that as well. This is a 3-unit play for me. The last 3 overs have went way over in Kansas, Texas. Both of these offenses are playing at an above average pace in terms of seconds per play. So I think we'll see a high scoring affair there. Texas hasn't put up the offensive numbers we've been expecting, but it's still a top 20 team in explosiveness. So they've shown that, maybe they can't grind out the drives in the way we want. But like I said earlier with Kentucky, they can make those big plays happen. The Jayhawks have maybe been the craziest combination of defensive rankings in college football. They rank 5th in generating havoc, but they sit dead last in finishing drives allowed, which feels perfect for betting overs in that situation. 11 of the 13 Kansas road games since the start of 2021 have gone over the total. So I like this over at 61, Kansas, Texas, which I think plays with Kansas keeping it close as well.
Yeah, I like that as well. I'm going to throw a little under for you here, Mark Henry. So this is not a game that will be a sexy pick for anyone. This is not one you should be locked to your couch, but I do suggest this as a worthwhile investment and flip onto a more entertaining game. I like the under in the Eastern Michigan versus Central Michigan game. I got it at 47.5. It's down to 45 now. It opened at 48. This is just 2 bad teams playing football. I'll start out with Eastern Michigan. They're coming off a week in which they were blanked by Jacksonville State, 21-0. In this matchup, Eastern Michigan averaged just 2.4 yards per play, and they were 1 for 15 on third downs. Their quarterback, Austin Smith, has been brutal. He's averaging just 5.4 yards per attempt this year and has a lowly 50.6 passing grade on PFF. Central Michigan is slightly better in that department. Their defense is definitely worse, which opens the door for some points to be scored, but I just don't think Eastern Michigan is capable. And when we're looking at them as a season, as far as what they've put up, they've eclipsed 33 in the first week against Howard and then dropped down to just 6 against Minnesota, 19 against UMass, and then 0 against Jacksonville State last week. These are 2 teams that neither of them are fast in their pace of play. Eastern Michigan ranking 94th in seconds per play and Central Michigan at 122nd. So I think this is going to be a boring football game, one not worth watching. You click the submit button on that under, and then you flip to another game.
The directional Michigans, Eastern and Central there. That's what they call Eastern, Western, Central. The directional Michigans. I like that. I like you going under. I used to have a term for that. Last year we had a term for. It wasn't sicko mode. It was something like that. We had some. Oh my God, the money's in the crumbs. I forgot about it.
I like that.
The money's in the crumbs. No, no. I'm out of it, guys. I need to wake up. That money's in the crumbs is a Rico Bosco saying. My saying that I took and turned, the money's in the dumpster.
Okay. I'm with that.
The money's in the dumpster. That's what it was. We need like an Oscar the Grouch drop on that.
Yeah, right.
I love trash. we need that. That'd be good. But let's get to my next one here at 7:30. Give me the Cox. South Carolina. Give me the Gamecocks. Plus 12.5 at Tennessee for 3 units. And I'll take the money line. I'll sprinkle on it at plus 400. The Gamecocks stunned Tennessee at home last November. South Carolina's 4-1 against the spread in its last 5 as a visitor. They won 63-38 in a game. Spencer Rattler went absolutely, bananas in that game. Had the best game of his life, 438 yards, 6 touchdowns. Gamecocks scored 28 straight points, turning a tight game with the Vols into a blowout once Hendon Hooker went down. And in that game, Joe Milton proved he ain't the guy. He's still not the guy. That cost Tennessee a spot in the playoff. I understand people are pointing at that and saying, Tennessee's going to come out mad. They don't have the same team they had last year, though. Under Shane, this is a crazy stat. Under Shane Beamer, South Carolina has been a double-digit underdog 10 times. The Gamecocks have won 4 of them outright. Since 2021, no Power 5 team has won as many games as a double-digit underdog as South Carolina, who's won 4. Nobody else has won 3, let alone nobody else of winning 4 in that situation. So South Carolina, Shane Beamer are the exact duo that you want to be backing as a huge, huge underdog. They've proven that. They throw the ball at the 29th highest rate in the country. Volunteers are 110th in opponent completion percentage allowed. Milton is ranked as 106th best quarterback in the nation by PFF. South Carolina is really weak in the secondary. I don't think Milton can exploit it. I think South Carolina can exploit Tennessee's weakness. I don't think vice versa. So that's why I'm on South Carolina, and I think they can win the game just like Kansas. My big take, one of South Carolina or Kansas is pulling off the upset today.
Okay.
maybe I should say one of them or Syracuse, but I think it's one of South Carolina or Kansas are pulling off the upset.
Yeah, I'm more on board with the South Carolina pick as far as upset potential. That I can see that they had the massive upset last year that they can kind of look for a repeat here. They are that type of team. They are scrappy. I do think the number is too high here. So this is another that I lean toward the points. But if I'm comparing this to the Kansas game, that I give South Carolina a better chance to pull off that upset.
Let's move on to one that I don't want to talk about.
Uh-oh.
I don't want to. I bet against my team. I know it's a violation, but I bet Duke plus 6.5. It's a small play, 1 unit. This is gross. It's just gross to talk about. The Blue Devils are 12-5 against the spread overall, 7-1 against the spread as a dog under Coach Mike Elko, 6-1 against the spread as a home dog since the start of last year. Mike Elko's Duke team beat Sam Hartman at Wake Forest last year, and he had a pretty bad game against his defense last year. Duke thrived in its last primetime nationally televised game where they absolutely pummeled Clemson. The 17th ranked Blue Devils could absolutely do it again here. The most notable change this year from last year has been the play of Duke's defense, which has allowed just 5 touchdowns in 4 games. Duke ranked inside the top 20 in EPA, or ranks inside the top 20 in EPA per rush and rushing explosiveness, which is big for a team that runs the ball almost 57% of the time. Duke has a chance to reach 5-0 for the first time since winning the first 7 games of the 1994 season. This is the first time a ranked Duke team has hosted a ranked opponent since the 23rd ranked Blue Devils beat number 13 Virginia in November 1994, before anyone in this room was born. One bad stat, Notre Dame has won 29 straight regular season games against ACC opponents since losing in 2017 to Miami. So for fans like me, I'm rooting for this bet to lose. But I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Duke's going to run and control the clock. So giving me 6.5 points in a game that I truly do think is a toss-up in a 50-50 ball of who's going to win the game. I think if I had to make a pick on the game, it's Duke, because when Notre Dame loses, they generally lose in bunches. 9 of the last 12 years, they've lost 2 games straight at some point in the year. And in 2022 and 2020, after losing their first game, they lost their second game the next week. I do think there's an emotional gut punch to what happened last week. Your season's over.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess you could win out, but their schedule's so hard. Duke, Louisville, Clemson, USC. There's so many good teams left on the schedule. 3 tough road trips. So I just don't see a way. I mean, they could win every game and they will get to the playoff due to how tough that schedule is. But I think it's too hard of an undertaking, and I think it's an emotional gut punch. I think Duke wins the game.
Yeah, it's funny. I sat up here with Jeremy all morning talking about how I didn't want to come at your neck by having Duke here, that I thought you're going to be upset by me betting against your boys. And I'm very surprised to see you on the same side. But I do think Duke is the more complete football team. They are at home. This is the first college football game day at Duke in forever. Forever. Yeah, literally the first one there. You can see all the fans hyped. I do think this is going to be the best football experience at Duke University ever. I think people are going to show up to this game. And I'll even go as far as to say that you can keep the points, that I do think Duke wins outright in this one. I think that is the ultimate gut punch in how they lost that last game. Just driving down at the end, kind of sticking the knife in and twist it to lose that one. It's tough to get back up after that one. And I'll even go as far as to say, I don't think the gap between Sam Hartman and Riley Leonard is as big as it should be. And I'll even say, like, that's pretty close there. Riley Leonard, while these stats don't pop as much as Hartman's for sure, he's got that dog in him. That kid knows how to play. He's a winner. He leaves it all on the floor. His feet are a real weapon there. He's got some like Josh Allen in his game that I can see, and I really like him as a quarterback. So I think Duke's going to show up tonight, and I think they win outright.
Yeah, I agree, but I would say take the points because I do think it's going to be low scoring.
Sure.
So I think it's going to be low scoring. I do think Notre Dame has a chance to win for sure, and there's a chance they come out and blow them out, but that would be if Notre Dame runs all over them, and the running game didn't look that good last week. Notre Dame should have a massive advantage in the trenches, but they said that about Clemson in week 1. This is less about Notre Dame to me, actually. I've been higher on Duke since July. Like, I've been pumping Duke, and I gave their over as one of my favorite win totals. I think it was 6.5 or 7.5.
They're a good football team.
I feel good about that right now. Another team I feel good about, surprisingly, it's the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Really?
At 9 o'clock, I love Alabama -14 at Mississippi State. This has a lot to do with Alabama, but it has even more to do with Mississippi State. The Crimson Tide haven't lost outright to Mississippi State since 2007, and they're 7-1 against the spread in their past 8 against the Bulldogs. Saban absolutely owns Mississippi State. Mississippi State has failed to cover each of its past 4 games as a home underdog. Mississippi State is 1-6 against the spread in its last 7 SEC games. Mississippi State is just lost without Mike Leach. As Brandon Walker would say, they shouldn't even be playing football. You can't come after them. They should be mourning. That's why Brandon Walker won't take any crap online for his team being bad, because he's still mourning. Mississippi State's top running back is hurt. Their defense gave up explosive plays as well as long, excruciating drives to South Carolina. It's a bad combination of things to give up there. I just don't think they promoted their defensive coordinator, Zach Arnett, to be the head coach. I don't think he's the guy. I don't think he's an SEC head coach. And I think it's going to show today against a really smart coaching staff in Alabama. So Alabama's defense has been really good since the loss to Texas. They've only given up 559 yards and 13 points combined against South Florida and Mississippi. They sacked Rebels quarterback Jackson Dart 5 times in the 24-10 win. They played their best game of the season against Ole Miss, forcing 4 punts and limiting them to 1.9 yards per carry. Alabama's going to be favored in every game for the rest of the year. They'll probably be right back in the SEC championship after everyone wrote their obituary.
Right. They're going to be back to Jalen Milroe, a quarterback that's straightforward from now on.
Yeah, he's been good. He played really well last week. They said that he's the guy for the rest of the year, no matter what.
Okay, that's good to hear. I was pretty optimistic about Milroe coming into the year. Was not after the start of the season. The arm does not look to be there. There also seems like a lack of confidence, as can be seeded by him being benched in game 2, and just the play call when watching. It feels like they're afraid to give him the opportunity to mess up. And I read into that a lot when watching guys. When thinking about like how to evaluate them as talent, is how much does their team trust them to allow them to go out and make the play? I don't feel very strongly about that with Jalen Milroe. I feel like he's on a pretty tight leash. I think Alabama wins this game and covers because they are the more complete team, because Mississippi State is not a good team. But I'm still not ready to buy back in on some Alabama stock. I'm not as optimistic on you as getting them at a low point now and watching them build up. I think they're pretty limited as a ceiling as a team this year, mainly because of the Milroe factor. And I am disappointed because I was pretty high on him coming into the year.
My leans that I didn't bet here, I like A&M minus 5.5 at Arkansas at noon. I'm just afraid Max Johnson, the backup quarterback, coming in. He was good last week. I don't know if he can do that again. So I am afraid to bet that one. And then 8 o'clock, I do lean Virginia Tech plus 2.5 against Pitt. Pitt is terrible. Going into Blacksburg's tough, but Virginia Tech is a train wreck. So I just couldn't get behind that and bet them. So I'm staying away those two. You said you had that under. You were on Duke. I think you had 2 other plays.
I'll throw out my last one here. I'm going to take Washington. I got it minus at 18.5. That is up to minus 19 now. That's tonight against Arizona. I'm pretty in on this Washington team. I really can't wait to see them when the tougher part of their schedule approaches, but the numbers that these guys are putting up are just unreal. Averaging 49.8 points per game this year. I don't think that Arizona defense has any chance of slowing them down. Michael Penix is simply too good. The things that they're doing on that offense are unbelievable. I mean, Washington tallied 199 total points through their first 4 games. That's hard to do. They rank 3rd in the country with that. They have NFL talent surrounding him. I think Penix is making a Heisman case for himself. I think this is going to be another example of them just putting up points, Arizona being unable to match, and them cruising past that 19-point spread there. I think Washington jumps up early and Arizona doesn't find a way to get back into the game.
Yeah, it's definitely the way I would lean on that one as well. Let's take a quick break and let's come back. Let's give our NFL picks before we get over to TrillBro Dude. So keep it locked to the Gambler right here on the Tough Cover Radio Show.
Get ready to experience the
took a little bit too much time there with college. It's a big college card, so we dove into it. We kind of shortchanged the NFL here, so we're gonna run through the picks. What's the 2-minute drill here? I guess it's really like a 8-9 minute drill to get you through 14 of my picks here in the NFL. It's bad because I love this slate, but we're having Trill on in the 12 o'clock hour. We're going to be talking a ton about this week in the NFL with him, and then we're gonna talk a little bit more about it in the second hour as well. But let's start it out. Let's talk about the first game, which isn't at 1 o'clock. It's in London, mate. I don't have much of an accent. That's why I played Wonderwall. Shout out to I think they're from close to that area.
Something.
Yeah, somewhere. It's not in England.
Americans
Across
do not know
pond,
geography.
Mate.
Yeah. Americans do not know geography. Apparently, I get.
Yeah. So let's go to London, and let's bet on the London Jags.
All right.
The Jags -3. It's one of my absolutely favorite. It's my favorite bet of the NFL Sunday that isn't Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown, because that almost doesn't count. It's my favorite bet every week. But taking that out, it's my favorite bet on a side is Jags -3 this week. Favorites have excelled in international games. They're 29-9-1 straight up, 25-14 against the spread. Favorites at Wembley Stadium specifically, 17-6-1 straight up, 14-10 against the spread. Favorites of a field goal or more overseas, 23-6-1, 19-11 against the spread. The Jags, I know they lost to the Texans last week. It was ugly. They still outgained them by 100 yards and had 7 more first downs than them. They sucked on 3rd and 4th down and had bad turnover luck. They actually ranked first. If you look at NFL luck rankings so far, they have been the unluckiest team in the NFL. And a lot of that comes to guys not being able to get their feet in too. Like they've had a ton of receivers.
Or just drops. Calvin Ridley is leading the NFL in drops right now. Just last week, he had 2 drops and 2 false starts. Almost 10% of Trevor Lawrence's passes are being dropped right between his receiver's fingers. You have to hope that's rust, right?
Yeah, you have to hope so. You know what they were telling him in practice this week? Apparently, you just got to be you, man. That's a bad sign.
Not a good sign.
When that's the advice, like just be you.
Some
man.
Ben Simmons kind
of
coping there.
It's not good.
Not good.
I have some concerns about Calvin Ridley, but speaking of Calvin Ridley, if he's ever going to break out, this is the revenge game. It's the Atlanta Falcons. It's the team he was betting in the locker room for.
Let's check his bet slips this week.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be some Calvin Ridley parlays over there in London. They can't catch it. It's overseas.
Yeah.
International waters. But Atlanta, on the flip side, was also really bad last week. They only gained 183 yards against the Lions. They lost by 2 scores. This is crazy. They lost by 2 scores while Detroit committed 119 penalty yards. And you still lost by 2 scores. Like, that's crazy. The only thing the Jags have done well through 3 weeks in the trenches is stop the run. Guess what? That's going to be massive against the Falcons, a team that can only run the football. Desmond Ridder has no ability to throw a forward pass. So it's all about stopping the run when it comes to the Falcons. He's a bottom 5 quarterback in EPA plus completion percentage over expected. He's been far better at home than on the road, dating back to high school and college. If you look at his numbers, it's crazy. I don't think he's lost a home game in his life, or something crazy like that, or he's never not covered. It's something like that, dating back to college. I don't know if they had spreads in his high school games, but the Falcons are just 3-8 against the spread in their last 11 games overall, 0-6 straight up in their last 6 road games. Jags are 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 games. Teams of quarterbacks who were sacked 7+ times in their previous games are 86, 113, and 5 in their next game over the last 20 years. There are 2 teams that fit that mold, as it had a quarterback get sacked 7+ times last week. One of them is the Falcons. I'll be betting against the other one in just a minute. But 1 o'clock, I got the jersey on for a reason. It's not to rep Louisville winning 13-10 yesterday. It's for the back.
Lamar Jackson.
This is a Lamar respect bet. Did you know Lamar Jackson is the greatest regular season against the spread underdog quarterback of all time? The history of football. He's played 12 games as a regular season underdog. He is a 11-0-1 against the spread in those 12 games. 6-0 against the spread as a dog in the last 3 years. I don't think people would know that he's the best underdog quarterback of all time.
Most underrated quarterback maybe ever.
That might be true too. I mean, you look at his win-loss record. It's like 49-17 or something. Dude just doesn't lose football games, and no one cares, but whatever. He's the best underdog quarterback against the spread, like I just said. He's 8-4 straight up in those 12 games that he's an underdog. That's an insane stat. Jackson's 17-6 against the spread as a favorite of 3 points or less, or as an underdog combined. So if it's a close spread, you want to back Lamar. Ravens are 19-4 against the spread in their last 23 games as an underdog since 2018. One of these losses is Josh Johnson. The other 3 are Tyler Huntley. None of them are Lamar Jackson. Harbaugh's 20 games over 500 against the spread as an underdog, 54, 34, and 3 against the spread. Jackson 6-2 straight up and against the spread against the Browns. Lamar 6-2 on the road in the AFC North. They're the 6th ranked passing defense in DVOA. And you look at how Baltimore lost last week. Indy made 4 50-plus yard field goals. It wasn't like that defense got driven on. 12 of those points in a low-scoring game, 50-plus yards field goals.
Brutal missed PI, too, which in overtime, that really hurt. But, yeah, I think the Lions got this wrong. I think the Ravens should straight up be the favorite. I've seen things shift. Originally, they were plus 130 on the money line, the Ravens there. I think that's completely wrong. I saw it plus 102 today, so it's definitely sneaking back down there.
Well, the Watson injury is making the line go down,
Which I don't even know how I feel about that, because Watson, while he's starting to show some flashes again, is still, I'm not believing that guy is still in him completely. The guy that we once saw. There should be some real concerns for Browns fans. But Lamar Jackson is straight up my MVP pick right now. He's been that good to start this year. And the Ravens, to me, are a dark horse team that I believe should be in the contending conversation.
I think they're right there. I think Tua has to be the MVP as of right now.
I'll give you that.
Lamar's on the outside looking in. I mean, he's right there. Speaking of Tua, I'm betting against him this week. Give me the Bills minus 2.5, 3 units on the Bills there. Bills defense is 2nd in EPA per play allowed, 2nd in EPA per dropback, top 10 in rushing success rate allowed. The Dolphins are the 12th team in the last 20 years to be 3-0 and against the spread and straight up, but be listed as an underdog in their 4th game. Those previous 11 teams went 2-9 in that game. Teams after scoring 60-plus points in their previous game are 1-5 straight up and 0-6 against the spread since 1970. So you drop a 60 burger, you usually don't win the next week. It's only happened once. Through 3 weeks, Tua is the favorite to win MVP. Mike McDaniel is the favorite to win Coach of the Year. Tyreek Hill is the favorite to win Offensive Player of the Year. I think people probably could be reading some press clippings this week if you're the Miami Dolphins after dropping 70. And then you look at the team they're playing. They won by 34 this week. It's like the Dolphins won by 50. The Bills won by 34. Is that really that different? Probably not. Like, it's a blowout's a blowout, kind of.
Yeah.
It's just, it's different feathers of a blowout. But the Dolphins are just 1-9 straight up in their last 10 against the Bills, 0-7 straight up in their last 7 against the Bills. While Tua is 13-5 against the spread at home, he's 9-1 against the spread on the road. Josh Allen has 58 wins in his career, 44 have been at least by a touchdown. But by the way, if you like the over here, the total has gone over in 12 of the last 17 Bills-Dolphins matchups. I do lean over. I don't have it on the card, but give me the Bills minus 2.5 there. I'm going to skip these two. So get me to I want to talk about this one. Jeremy loves when I bring up revenge games. This is the ultimate revenge game. The ultimate revenge game. It's Jameis Winston time. It's Jameis Winston time.
Eating W's.
Give me the Saints minus 3 against the Tampa Bay Bucks. I think that lines up to 3.5, but I'll take it at 3.5 as well. Todd Bowles is one of the worst coaches in the NFL as an underdog. 13-37 straight up. 19-28-3 against the spread as a dog. His against the spread mark is 143rd out of 147 coaches in the last 20 years. I mean, that's how bad Todd Bowles has been against the spread. And you look at Baker Mayfield. He's 31-42-1 against the spread as a dog, 116th of 119 QBs since he's been in the league. Mike Evans has faced Marshawn Lattimore 11 times in his career. He has just 3 touchdowns and 5 or fewer catches in 10 of those games. The Saints have absolutely owned Tampa. The Bucs are 2-8 against the spread in their last 10 meetings versus the Saints, their least profitable opponent against the spread since 2019. And then this is a nice little Eagles stat. Teams after playing the Eagles have struggled in recent years, which makes a lot of sense. You beat them up in the trenches.
Right.
They are 19-33-1 and 19-34 against the spread since 2020 in the week after playing the Eagles. Tampa coming off not just a game against the Eagles, but a short week against the Eagles. They played on Monday Night Football. They got to be beat up. I think the Saints come in and they lay a beat down, and we start to have some fun Jameis Winston conversations on if he's the savior for the Jets or if the Saints have to hold on to him. I really do think he has a big Sunday against Tampa Bay. Revenge game.
By the way, it feels weird the Eagles are playing at 1 o'clock this week. It feels strange to see them on like a normal football schedule.
Speaking of it, Jalen Hurts anytime rush touchdown. 8 units.
Who would have saw that one coming?
8 units.
After last week.
We cashed 12 units on it last week.
Insane.
It's not plus money. It's sitting at minus 110 this week. So they've learned a
Still.
little bit, but not quite enough yet. It's still bettable. 21 rush touchdowns in the last 20 games. 34 rush touchdowns in 41 starts. When are they going to learn? It should be minus 170 like he's Travis Kelce or Christian McCaffrey. That's honestly what it should be. But taking that out, that's obviously my best bet. I also love the Eagles minus 8. Sam Howell's been sacked 19 times this season, which is the most of any quarterback. Howell got sacked 9 times in Washington's previous game. They're the other team who had a quarterback sacked more than 7 times last week. I'm betting against them and the Falcons. He had 4 picks and 9 sacks taken last week. The NFL record for sacks taken in a season is 76, set by David Carr for the Texans in 2002. Howell's on pace to take 107. That's just absolutely unreal. Given this information, it feels like the Eagles are the worst possible opponent for Washington. Here's a fun little Jalen Hurts stat. Hurts has won 20 of his last 21 regular season starts. He's the 6th quarterback in the Super Bowl era to have a stretch like this, joining Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Montana, and Jim McMahon. He was the 85 Bears quarterback, but nice company.
Jim McMahon's the man.
Yeah, Jim McMahon is the man. Let's move on real quick. I'm rapid fire. 425. I got 5 bets on this game. Give me the Patriots +7 at the Cowboys. By the way, they are a live dog to win that game. Patriots can win that game. We're all assuming the Patriots aren't good. That's based on losses, close losses to Miami and Philadelphia, who might be the 2 best teams in football, or at least 2 of the best teams in football.
Absolutely.
I think New England's legit. I think they're going to be a 9+ win team.
They're definitely a team that you don't want to play, that they are a grinded out, have a chance to win every single game.
And a big reason for that is their defense. These might be the 2 best defenses in the sport. I almost said the country, but give me under 43.5 in this game. And also first half under 22.5. So give me both unders, 1 unit on each. This goes against it, but revenge game, Jeremy, we need like some sort of drop.
Another one. We do.
We need a revenge drop, but Zeke touchdown against the Dallas Cowboys +250, 1 unit. Belichick likes that stuff. Belichick does that type of stuff. He will care enough to do that. He will do that for Zeke. So give me that Zeke touchdown. Give me Tony Pollard over 70.5 rush yards. He's done that in 2 of the 3 games this year. In the game that he didn't do it, he had 70. He's had 48 carries the last 2 weeks. Tony Pollard's a stud. And he's going to be out to prove a little something playing against Zeke on the other side. Also at 425, I'm going rapid fire here. I like Jake Moody, the kicker, over 7.5 points for San Francisco.
Okay.
Also over 1.5 field goals. He's done so. He's hit 3+ field goals in each game so far this year. He's had 9+ points in each, or he's had 12+ points in each game this year. If you look at his points, nobody likes settling for field goals more than Kyle Shanahan. So give me Jake Moody on those props. And one last one, 11:59. We need to get the commercial, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Jeremy's Seattle Seahawks.
Thank you.
Give me the Seattle Seahawks Monday Night Football money line at the New York Giants. Daniel Jones primetime. Are you kidding me? 1-12 straight up, 0-5 straight up at home at night. Over the last 20 years, 96 quarterbacks have made 5+ primetime starts. Jones has the lowest win percentage among any of them. On the flip side, Pete Carroll, 34-18-3 against the spread in his career at night. The best of any head coach that's active in the NFL. Smith is 20-14-2 against the spread as a dog. Give me the Seahawks. Let's go to break. TrillBro Dude coming up next. Let's slop him up.
The way that things have been going with the Sixers over the last 10 months, it's nice to talk about a team that doesn't make me want to jump off the Ben Franklin Bridge. So
yeah, I mean, you're an OKC fan anyway. I don't know who these Sixers are that you're talking about. You've been a lifetime Thunder fan.
Yes, yeah, it was all a bit when I said I love the Sixers and Daryl Morey and Joel Embiid and James Harden. I've always been Sam Presti's the GOAT to your GM, and that I no longer recognize the Sixers. So yeah, it's good to talk about my Eagles and Thunder, the teams that are teams that we can respect.
And your Phillies, right? Are you going to hop on again for the bandwagon in the playoffs here?
Yeah, sure. I was at the bar last night talking to Kyle Schwarber, and I was like, sure. I'm a big Kyle Schwarber fan because I know that the efficiency calculator rats of the MLB don't like him, and I just have to support a fellow hooper. So go Phils.
Yeah. He's a total hooper. I love that take. Kyle Schwarber's absolutely a hooper. He's just a true baller. But let's talk a little Eagles. Let's talk a little football. We're going to get to the slop. We're going to get to Dame. We're going to get to Drew, get to all that stuff. But real quick, let's talk about some football. Let's talk about the Eagles. We're sitting at 3-0 here, obviously. Yet, if you looked on Phillies or you look on Eagles Twitter, by the way, Penn State just ran a tush push. It's funny that's
taking over.
Yeah, it's taking over the planet there. But Eagles 3-0. You look at Twitter, you listen to the radio. I think you'd probably think they were 1-2 or 2-1. You'd think there's a ton of teams that look incredible and a ton of teams that were 3-0. There seems to be some freak out, seems to be kind of a, worry, especially about the offense, about the play calling, about Jalen Hurts. Where are you, I guess, on the worryometer on a 1 to 10 about how the play calling, how the offense, and how Jalen have looked?
I'm cool as a cucumber. I'm not worried right now about anything. You're 3-0. The thing about Jalen is that I just trust. I mean, you came on the stream after the first game, Mark, and the second game, and you were basically saying, I trust Sirianni to figure it out over the course of the season. Mm-hmm. I'm not too worried about the offense. And look, did it look amazing against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Monday Night Football? No, but also they were pretty much getting whatever they wanted in between the 20s. It's really just when they got down into Tampa Bay territory that they were kind of struggling to finish off drives. Jalen was a bit inaccurate in the red zone, threw two interceptions, and then obviously had some miscommunications and some bad throws. But on the whole, I felt like it was his best game of the season, and I feel like they were making steps in the right direction. When DeAndre Swift is able to do literally whatever he wants, and the offensive line is run blocking the way that they are, that's such a solid foundation to build on. And I feel like that I'm not really concerned in the same way that I was after weeks 1 and 2, when it felt like the offense was completely stagnant and unable to really get anything going until the end of games. So yeah, I'm good. I'm fully back on after the last 2 games, and kind of just, I think they're headed in the right direction and they're going to figure this thing out.
Yeah, one of the things that gives me the most optimism regarding Jalen Hurts specifically is, number one, the head on his shoulders. The guy just gets it. And number two, it looks like he's getting better at each game. And it feels like we're building towards it. They're facing off with the Commanders, 9.5-point spread this week. This feels like, to me, the week where we might see like the peak of what the Eagles could look like. That they're kind of shaking off the dust of the offseason, hitting their stride a little bit. Trill, do you think this is the week that we kind of see things in full force?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the Washington matchup is going to be a good matchup for us. I mean, the last 2 weeks, Washington's defense has been able to stop literally no one. And then in addition to that, they also have the fact that, their defense their offensive line on the other side of the ball is just unable to protect the quarterback. And if that's the case, I think we're going to see a ton of sacks. I think we're going to see a lot of potential turnovers that will get the Eagles in good field position, and they'll be able to build on that. Like, I'm genuinely not concerned at all about this game tomorrow, which I know those are classic final words, especially when you consider the only game that they've lost in the last regular season game that they've lost in like the last 2 calendar years was against Washington. So it is kind of tempting fate, but I just think the Eagles are a much better football team. And I think that you're totally right. I think that they'll come out aggressive from the jump, and I think they'll want to send a message now that they've had a few weeks to warm up. Like I said, preseason is 3 weeks. We got our preseason over. Starters didn't really play, especially Jalen. He didn't play at all in the preseason. So the preseason is over, and now the season can start.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a rout. I think it's the worst possible matchup for Washington with the O-line issues that they're having. I think this is kind of a statement game for the Eagles. So looking kind of outside of the Eagles real quick, looking to the Dallas Cowboys, and obviously they had their loss to the Arizona Cardinals as a big favorite last week. I think apologies are due for Jonathan Gannon, but that's a whole other conversation. But the Dallas Cowboys lost, and obviously it's a little bit of a fluke. I don't think we think that Dallas Cowboys aren't like better than the Arizona Cardinals, but are you looking at that loss as like, all right, everyone needs to pump the brakes? They weren't as good as everyone was saying. They weren't on Philly and San Fran's level. Or do you think it was a total fluke? Because to me, it was obviously somewhat flukish that they lost the game, but I never put them on that Philadelphia, San Francisco level. So it's pretty easy for me to point at them and say, I think they're eligible to lose this week against New England, and then they have a tough game against San Fran. I wouldn't be shocked if Dallas is 2-3 after the first 5 weeks. Where are you at on Dallas?
So you were kind of on this bandwagon from the jump of the season about, let's look at who they're playing. You have the Jets with Zach Wilson, who, as we've discussed many times, is the 55th best quarterback in the NFL, not even like a top 15 backup in the NFL. So you can probably kind of write that game off from Dallas dominating that. And then, look, the Giants have looked better that week one destruction from Dallas. But, look, they lost Trayvon Diggs for the season. And I know that he's kind of been up and down in his career. But at the end of the day, this is the guy who made the Pro Bowl last year, I believe. Mm-hmm. And then in addition to that, he actually started off the year really good for them, tears his ACL. And then they lose 3 offensive linemen for last week's game. That's why I think it is a bit flukish, just because if you look at the statistical profile, if you watch the game, it was kind of similar to the way that the Eagles played against the Buccaneers, but the Cowboys had a ton of opportunities that they blew, and the Cardinals were able to take advantage of it in a way that the Buccaneers weren't in their game. So I kind of see it as a bit flukish, but I still view Dallas as, I would say that so far, if you were to tier the teams, just based on what they've looked like, you remove everything that we know about these teams, the playoff history, the NFC Championship game last year, all that stuff. I do think San Francisco has looked like they're in a bit of tier of their own to start the year. I would then put the Eagles and the Cowboys in half a tier down right now. I think that I would put the Eagles above because, look, they haven't lost a game so far, obviously. They haven't had the toughest competition, but neither has Dallas, and Dallas lost a game to the tanking Arizona Cardinals. So I don't take too much from that game, but it also kind of reminds me of why I always call them the Sixers of the NFL, the Cowboys. Like, I will never believe in their true ceiling as long as Mike McCarthy is calling the plays. And as, great as Dak can be, one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL, I still think that he might limit your ceiling when he is your quarterback, especially when you have a play caller like Mike McCarthy, who's so incredibly conservative. And by the way, Kellen Moore wasn't the problem. Chargers offense looks great with a real QB. I'm just saying.
No, Kellen Moore was definitely not the problem. So anyone that was trying to blame Dak's struggles on that was very misguided in my opinion there. I think San Fran and Philly are in a tier together. And then I think the tier down from that is probably Detroit and Dallas. And then it's everyone else. That's probably how I would tier it personally. I guess I'll go there next. Thursday Night Football. Detroit is 3-1. I've been pretty skeptical on Detroit all along. It's hard for me to poke too many holes in that Thursday night win on the road. Even if you're not that high on Green Bay, it's a tough place to play. Is Detroit kind of eking their way into this conversation of it was kind of that top 3 and then Dallas lost and it's the top 2 in Dallas maybe? Is Detroit kind of hanging around in that conversation?
I can't get there yet. I understand that they've had a nice start to the year. They could be 4-0 easily. They honestly, I thought that they were the better team in that Seahawks-Lions game. They kind of choked the game away, in my opinion. But they could easily be 4-0 to start this season, and everyone would be riding the hype train. Obviously, look, guys like to play for Dan Campbell. He seems like he's got a good hold on the locker room. They've got a ton of talent for sure. But I just keep going back to the fact that like, one, how do we trust Jared Goff at the higher levels without a play caller and offensive mind like Sean McVay? And as good as the surroundings are in Detroit, I think that it's not quite as much talent as he had when he was with the Rams. I just can't really buy into a Jared Goff playoff team. And it's not to say that Jared Goff is bad. I think Jared Goff is a perfectly fine starting quarterback. I'm skeptical until I see it at the higher levels. In the regular season, sure, they could win 11, 12 games and have a really nice regular season. I'm just skeptical of them as like a legit contender. And I honestly go back to their draft and I say if they just had like a normal first round, I would be so much higher on them. But they decided to trade back and draft a running back and a linebacker, and that has not really worked out for them so far. Now, Brian Branch has been awesome. He was like a first-round talent they got in the second round, so that makes up for a little bit, certainly. But I'm just like, man, I'm so glad the team did not, end up getting one of those guys at the top of the draft, like Christian Gonzalez or Jalen Carter, that really could have taken them up to the next level, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they also have not been giving Gibbs the ball nearly as much as I've expected based on the reaction by that draft pick. But I wanted to circle back to the quarterback talk and conversation. Even when you bring up guys like Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy, it's interesting to me, as much as we want to sugarcoat things, look at defense, look at coaches, quarterback plays such a strong role in the overall ceiling of a team. And as we look around the NFC specifically, I really don't see a quarterback in competition with Jalen Hurts for the best quarterback in the NFC. I think Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy are probably the stiffest competition. And to me, it's pretty clear that I'm taking Jalen Hurts over either of those. So do you think that overall is such a strong reason for the Eagles to have confidence in themselves? And do you think there's anybody else that's kind of in that conversation that I guess I'm missing?
Am I going to sound like an insane person and say that Kirk Cousins
has
been
yeah.
been in? I know they're 0-3, so it doesn't really matter. But he has been so good to start the year in a way that I've never really anticipated from Kirk. And look, Kirk's had really good regular seasons before. He's got, arguably the best player in the NFL, Justin Jefferson, throwing the ball to. But I think if you're going based on this season and what we know, Kirk has really made a case, but that doesn't really matter because the Vikings just don't have the team to make an impact. Now, if he gets traded to another NFC team, or if he, we talked about the Jets before, that would be interesting to me. And obviously that's another decent quarterback move to the other conference, which we would welcome with open arms. I still am, look, I said to Mark after week one, I was like, look, Purdy's just good, man. Like, I don't think he's, going to change your life. But Mark compared him to Jimmy Garoppolo when he was in San Francisco. And that's kind of all they need for their offense to get to at least a NFC championship level. The question becomes, can he lift them up in a game where, like Jalen almost did in the Super Bowl, kind of dragging the team to victory at the higher levels. And I am skeptical of that. I've called him the luckiest quarterback in the NFL, in the history of the NFL, on Twitter many times, because I watch games and it's like, this guy just throws 5 interceptions every game, but they never get picked off. Like, there was a play the other night in that game where he threw a tip. There was a tip pass that in 9 out of 10 quarterbacks throw that pass, it gets intercepted or it's an incompletion. And, ball bounces up in the air, and I believe it was Deebo Samuel caught it out of the air and got a first down. Like, that has been kind of the thing with Brock Purdy. He's kind of the anti-Dak Prescott, who throughout his years has had some really bad luck in the playoffs, especially. But I definitely view as an overall quarterback, just as a weapon, like a guy who is leader of the locker room, has a good enough arm, is a threat in the running game. I think Jalen is in a tier of his own for the contenders, for sure. But I think that any given game, Dak or Purdy can have, because of the context that they're in, Dak or Purdy could probably play up to the level that Jalen has performed at the higher levels. I'm not going to believe it until I see it in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And I guess I'd be remiss. We'll move over to basketball in 1 second, but I know Sean Bernard's going to love this. You're not a Trevor Lawrence guy, so I'll let you have your moment here to gloat on me, T-Flaw, as you call him.
That was a joke. I've said before, I think that he's a perfectly good quarterback. I think he's a top 10, 12 quarterback in the NFL. I think he's just been prematurely crowned as like definitely one of the 5 to 7 best quarterbacks, and that I think he needs to prove more for a larger sample than some of these other guys who have done it for longer, even if it's not resulted in like winning at the higher levels. Having said that, I kind of DM'd you. I was like, "Oh, Herbert played great this past week," when I said I'd rather have Herbert than Lawrence, and Lawrence didn't play so great. I rewatched some of that game later because I didn't have a chance to catch it live. I was driving, but Trevor Lawrence was actually not bad in that game. He was actually pretty good. There was a ton of drops from their wide receivers. He's led the NFL in the Jacksonville Jaguars lead the NFL in wide receiver drops to start the year. So I'm not going to gloat on that. Like I got to give Trevor Lawrence more time and more time to kind of get adjusted with these new newer wide receivers. Obviously, Calvin Ridley's playing his first year there, and he started the year great and hasn't been as great as he was in that first game. But part of it is at least due to context for him, and especially we know Tress Taylor calling your offense is going to lead to some headaches. Let's say the least. But yeah, so I was trolling you with that, but he's actually been totally fine.
Yeah, and for the record, I'm far more negative on Justin Herbert than I am Trevor Lawrence.
No, I know you, but you're not a Trevor.
I'm not
guy
a Trevor
either.
Lawrence guy either, but
yeah.
I buy into more like Trevor Lawrence. Almost 10% of his passes are being dropped, like literally going through the fingers of his receivers. Some of that I kind of overlook more so than the Herbert stuff, which I feel like is more in his control.
Yeah, but Herbert, well, I will say Herbert was incredible last week. I think he did. I think he did play the best game of his life.
Efficient, high volume game in NFL history this last week.
Yeah,
he was like 46 or whatever it was. I think he completed 85% of his passes. He's just I'm bigger on Trevor Lawrence, or I'm sorry, I'm bigger on Justin Herbert than I think the majority of people that push back on him. But
I will say he was a my bad. He was a Kirk Cousins diarrhea attack away from 0-3 there.
That's what I was about to say. And for 3 consecutive weeks, including the game that they won, which Kirk threw the interception, and we all saw what happened there. For 3 consecutive weeks, the ball's been put in Justin Herbert's hand with the chance to win a game, and he's failed to do so. Yeah, that's the Justin Herbert that I know.
The one thing I will say is I wish they would have just let him sneak it last week instead of handing it to the fullback. But my whole thing, and people came after me on Instagram and Twitter when that clip went out, me talking about Herbert. My whole thing is mainly just that I acknowledge that there's a lot to be negative about in his surroundings. Now Mike Williams is hurt. I think his coaching staff's horrible. There's a lot of things that you can point out, but it just feels like at a certain point, if he's like, as you know, on the Josh Allen, Joe Burrow level, then he makes those plays. I don't think people are putting Trevor on that same level that people put Herbert on.
Yes.
But that's really all it comes down to for me. But let's switch gears. Let's get over to basketball. Let's talk about the Dame trade first before kind of the dominoes that fell because of the Dame trade. And obviously we're talking to TrillBro Dude. You can follow Trill at TrillBro Dude, and you can check out the Ball Patreon. It's great stuff. I've been on there a little bit, like we said recently, talking about the NFL. But yeah, it's they were doing the stream after the Dame trade. They were doing a stream yesterday on Patreon talking about the Drew Holiday trade ideas. But let's start with Dame. What are your kind of just overall takeaways? Obviously, I think we all think Milwaukee made away like bandits. I think we can blame your co-host Sam for making fun of the GM when you guys did the GM tiers. But what were your reactions?
He wanted to put him D tier for GMs, and I was like, he did win a championship. Like I think that we had a little bit. I was like, I think he's a B tier GM at a minimum, and Sam convinced me to put him in that D tier. And look, a month later, he came out with turned Drew Holiday and 1 guaranteed first round pick in Grayson Allen into Damian Lillard. So, pretty impressive. Certainly, look, as a avid Miami Heat hater, I am rejoicing over the fact that he did not end up there. But it is a bit of a monkey's paw situation where, oh man, I wish that Dame just never went to the Heat. And then he ends up going with one of the 25 best players of all time in your conference. So obviously not great. I mean, I think that we were talking about it last night on the Patreon, and we were saying probably the most, look, I don't know if they're the most talented duo of the last 5 to 10 years. Obviously, you've had a ton of, if Steph Curry and Kevin Durant at their peak, 2 of the three best players in the NBA. You also had Anthony Davis and LeBron James, who were top 5-ish players in the NBA during that one season with the Lakers. I'm not willing to go that far, but I don't think that there's been a duo that's quite as synergistic as Dame and Giannis. Like, the fit is just so hand in glove, and what Milwaukee has lacked for all these years is a true offensive engine. Even when they won the championship, they had a below average half-court offensive rating, and the only reason that they were able to kind of win that title, other than the fact that they had a very elite defense built around, you know, their current core, which, and also with Drew and PJ Tucker, but their offense was really dragged to the finish line by Chris Middleton hitting a ton of tough shots during that playoff run, like a historic amount of game winners, basically, in the fourth quarter. And it was always looking like they were getting it out of the mud, to quote Paul Reed, in those playoff runs. And, you know, Miami was able to take advantage of that 2 times when they played them. They were able to muddy up the games and, you know, win those series. And it was obviously a weak point. And I think that this team with Drew had hit its ceiling, and to replace him with a guy like Dame, who's just automatically gives you a top 5 offense if he's on your team. And then add in the fact that they have one of the best spacing bigs in Brook Lopez, who's also an interior force on defense. Adding in the fact that now Chris Middleton is more of a spot-up secondary creator, and adding in the fact that Giannis is one of the greatest, you know, rolling rim threats we've ever seen on the offensive end, and one of the most versatile defenders we've ever seen. I expect them to be really, really good and more dangerous in the playoffs than they have been over the last 4 years. Because I think people always say that the Mickey Mouse title was the bubble run. I think it was more the next year when everyone was hurt and guys were in and out with COVID, and the Suns. I'll just say this: the Bucks were lucky with the Nets injuries that year and the matchups that they got in that run. And now I think that they've given themselves a bit of proof, or a little bit of cushion over the fact that, you know, they might have some bad matchups that they'll just be able to overcome on pure talent.
Yeah. Shout out to the 2021 Sixers for allowing them to have a nicer path in the Eastern Conference Finals. Good job, guys. But putting that aside real quick. Oh, by the way, I really just want to throw this one in as another jab at Sam. I mean, the 2020 Lakers, you mentioned AD and LeBron being top 5 players at the same time. I've been told that was a bad basketball team.
Yeah, no, definitely. The team that was on pace for 60 games before the shutdown had a top 3 offense and defense, or top 5 offense and defense. And also, until the bubble resumed, was basically by far the best team in the NBA in the regular season, other than the Milwaukee Bucks, who choked in the bubble. And then they pretty much easily cruised to a title and only lost like 4 games the whole run. Yeah, that team was not any good at all.
I like that take by Sam. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite takes. But real quick,
it's incredible.
I love it. On that trade, the Phoenix aspect of it, what are they doing?
You tell me. I mean, look. You know, we talked about this. I don't know if I talked to you about this before it actually went down. We talked about it on the podcast where we were like, we've heard from like 7. Now, look, we're not like Woj or anything, but we hear from people and we hear rumors, and we heard from legitimately like 5 to 7 people that the Ayton for Nurkic swap was a lock, and we're like, why? What is happening? Like, is there another element? Are they getting like, is Dame going to the Heat and they're getting Caleb Martin? Like, why would they do this? Like, I don't understand. And then when the trade went down, I mean, the return was even worse than I could ever imagine. You take Nurkic, who, look, Ayton isn't a perfect player, and look, maybe you could make the argument that if Nurkic is healthy, it's similar to kind of what the Pelicans did a few years ago when they traded the Grizzlies did when they traded Jonas Valanciunas for Steven Adams. And, you know, look, it might have been an offensive downgrade, but, you know, you're bringing a guy who's going to be more engaged on the boards and, you know, set screens and do the center role player things. But Nurkic hasn't been that player since like 2018. So like, I don't really know what, and even then, like, he was only in his 5th year in the NBA, 4th year in the NBA when he was that guy. Like, he has a very small sample of being a legit starting caliber center in the NBA due to these injuries and aging concerns, and he's only 29. So, like, I don't understand what they're really doing, other than the fact the only thing I can think is that Ayton's agency was just like, please get rid of us, and all the offers were even worse than this. But I mean, they took on money in the deal. It wasn't a money-saving deal.
Right.
They're apparently leaving Keon Johnson. So you better hope Nas Little's good, because look, Grayson Allen's a fine player, but he's not much better than like Landry Shamet, who you just basically salary dumped in the Bradley Beal deal. So I don't really see this as an upgrade. I think it's a major downgrade for Phoenix, and personally, unless Nas Little is way better than he's been so far in his NBA career.
Yeah, it must be DeAndre Ayton just sucks that much as a person that they just wanted him out of there is really what I see. Is they're viewing this as addition by subtraction, because I do think the financial aspect, which you touched on there, is a big part. They added money to their cap in this deal. This was not a money-saving move. I do kind of like it from the Trailblazers' perspective of having a buy low on DeAndre Ayton. I know he's frustrating, but I'm a little bit of an Ayton truther that I think the talent's there.
Ugh.
If he cares a little bit. Did you see the video?
We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
You do like Ayton.
Do you see the video of him walking through the arena? I've never seen him smile so much.
Dude, go watch his Twitch stream. He likes video game, and I don't know if he likes basketball.
I mean, he's a guy who's averaged 17 and 10 while not caring about the team or basketball. He's 25 years old, former number one pick. Why not?
We brought Trill on so me and Sean could yell at each other about DeAndre Ayton. What are your thoughts?
Well, I was gonna say, Mark. I was expecting you to say that he has Ben Simmons brain, because that's really the vibe that I've gotten from Ayton, is that like he's a bit moody. He's not as invested in basketball as you probably want someone to be that you're paying a max contract. And the talent's there. We know the talent was there with both these guys, both number one overall picks. To a lesser extent, I think Karl Anthony Towns has had a better career than those guys, but Karl Anthony Towns kind of in the same bucket. But the thing with Ayton to me is like, he's certainly talented. He's certainly got the the athleticism, the size, everything you could ask for. But I'm like I'm not a big like culture guy. The Heat culture stuff drives me insane. But there's got to be a little bit of truth to that, right? Like there's got to be a little bit of truth, just like you got to like the people that you work with.
Yeah.
And if Ayton is going to be kind of a dude that you're building around, I just don't really trust the fact that like he was on a championship contender for 3 years and he was pouting and fighting with the coach during a game 7 and sat out a game 6 this past year. Like, I just kind of don't really want those guys on my team. So I it's nothing against the talent. It's just more against, like, if I'm trying to do a rebuild, I don't know if I want that dude in the building if he's, not going to be a good influence over the younger guys that are on the team.
Yeah, all very fair. And I guess from the Sixers perspective, the biggest part of this trade is Jrue Holiday. That we know for the Trailblazers, they're kind of taking this gamble of kick the can down the line. Let's see what we can get with Holiday, and that's going to be our ultimate return. I struggle to find a way to get Jrue Holiday to the Sixers in a deal. I understand the fit. I understand it would be great, but I just can't see it happening. How are you feeling on that? And do you think, like, I guess, would you be into Holiday if it's on the table? And do you think there's any chance of that, Trill?
Well, I think that this is kind of a situation where I'm not like the biggest Jrue Holiday fan in the world. I think that people overlook a lot of Drew's flaws on offense because
Agreed.
He is such a good defender. And, he's certainly not like what the Sixers would need, because similar, we were talking about the Bucks half-court offensive problems. That's also been the Sixers' largest problem outside of the games when James Harden shoots like he's Steph Curry in the playoffs. So I think that is, when you get to the higher levels, Jrue isn't going to solve the half-court offensive problems they've had.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, you have a situation right now with James Harden, who I just talked about, guys who don't want to be somewhere, and why it might be a good move to get rid of someone who doesn't want to be there, especially when they're, at the club a few nights ago with a sign that says Daryl Morey is a liar.
Well, he also had a sign that said, "We're not going to pull." Never mind. I won't finish.
So you can't say on the radio. But yeah. But but the fact that is happening is to me is kind of this is your get out of jail free card. Like, you have a guy who is obviously he's a malcontent in the locker room right now in James Harden. He doesn't want to be there, and whether that's right or wrong because he didn't get the contract, that's just the reality of the situation. And now you have a situation where a player who is at worst a fringe borderline all-star type guy in Drew Holiday, an all defense level guard who is by all means a good locker room guy that everyone loves. And by the way, has a player option a year from now on his contract that still would allow you to come up with whatever this plan is about cap space next summer. You might be able to bring Drew back at a lower cap hit, or you could just let him walk, and you kind of get the best of both worlds where you're still giving yourself a shot if you get a guy like Drew Holiday. You're banking on Maxey taking another step as an offensive creator, and you're hoping that Drew being there in the backcourt with him is enough to kind of at least get you to the conference finals and to a level that we've never been to in the playoffs, and keeping Joel Embiid happy and making the locker room better altogether for a first-year head coach. And look, do I want to give up one of the last picks that we could possibly get in addition to James Harden? No, on its face, that's not great value. But the reality of the situation is you've already punted on the value because you weren't able to get anything for James Harden before. So I think that there is a clear opportunity to trade James Harden to the Clippers, get a first round pick from that trade, flip it to the Blazers with whether it's players on the Sixers or an extra swap or a first round pick to the Blazers, and get Drew Holiday back to Philadelphia. I just think that is, like I said, it's the get out of jail free card. And you can do the whole thing where you wait for the best deal like you did with Ben Simmons, and then you make the deal too late and it doesn't matter anyway because you wait until 3 p.m. at the trade deadline like you do every year.
Mm-hmm. And I keep looking at this as the other teams kind of involved in this because there's going to be a healthy Drew Holiday market. If he ends up on the Clippers, the Heat, or the Celtics, all of those suck for the Sixers in a major way. Yeah,
I mean, well, at least, guys, at least we know that James Harden has shown throughout his career just a complete, utter, he has a lot of integrity.
Oh, that's him.
He plays with a lot of professionalism. So, I mean, I have no doubt that he's going to come back and handle this like a professional.
Super mature.
Yeah. All right. That's going to wrap it up. TrillBro Dude, one of our absolute favorite guests, and we're going to be having him on throughout the football season, not just the basketball season. And you can check out his stuff for now at TrillBro Dude, and he's got at Bell and the Bird on Twitter, which is going to become Birds Pod soon. Go subscribe to that pod, subscribe to the Patreon. Trill, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back, jam in some NFL picks, jam in a Love Me Flexi, jam in a little Donkey Brains. Back after this.
You call and Big Al will answer.
Cover Radio Show. Kentucky with a big play there, 75-yard touchdown. What was I talking about earlier, Sean Barnard? Was I talking about explosive play rates of Kentucky? Was I talking about how Florida gave up the most explosive plays in the country? Was I talking about how Kentucky had the most explosive plays in the country? I think I did. 17-0 Kentucky, first quarter. Loving it. Let's let Ray Davis looking like a star today. He's just apparently they call him Sweet Baby Ray.
I like that.
I'm all in on it.
I like that a lot.
All in. Kentucky seems to always have a good running back. They had Benny Snell, Chris Rodriguez. They had another one that I'm forgetting, but those two. That's my fault. I said 17-0. They better tackle
That was
him.
a jinx.
They just blocked.
All right, at least it's 16-0.
You're
16-0. It couldn't be 17-2 or 16-2. That would
Shout
have
out
been
the kicker.
tragic.
Yeah.
That would have been tragic. 16-0. No, good job by the kicker.
That's a highlight reel moment for that kicker right there.
He might care about that more than any kicks he makes.
Yeah, he's tracking down a guy
He
on a
was
block
out
kick.
of breath. He has not run that for that long in a long
You'd
time.
think he'd be a soccer player. You'd think that the kicker wouldn't have I guess I don't know.
That was probably like a 60-yard sprint, to be fair.
No, it
It
won't.
was far.
I couldn't even run that long.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong.
All right, let's go over to the NFL. Last week, I did the show remotely, and my dad has been bugging me for a while to get on the show, do some picks. So I let him. I learned everything I know about this stuff from him anyway. I told the story last week. I'll tell the cliff notes. The reason I ever found out what the plus and the minuses on the spreads were because we used to get the Sunday paper out of the Philly Inquirer. I used to circle the helmets on the games I used to think were going to win. And I'd ask him, what does it mean? Dolphins -3. What does that mean? And he'd be like, oh, I don't think he explained it to me fully as a gambling thing, but he explained it like they're expected to win by 3 points. And then, he created a monster.
All his fault.
It is
Here
all
we
his
are.
fault. It's all his fault. So he gave me 6 plays last week. He went 4-2. I gave my 6 plays. I went 5-1. We're doing a head-to-head thing. We have to come up with a fun name for it, but the AARP picks, the senior citizen picks. I don't know what
That's
we'll
wrong.
make
Disrespectful
him,
there.
but it's disrespectful to my own dad. I'm allowed to joke at him, but he's got Eagles -8.5. He's got Jags -3, Ravens +3, Patriots +7, Dolphins +2.5. And the Bengals -2.5. So my 6 picks that I gave were Jalen Hurts touchdown, Eagles -8.5, Jags -3, Ravens +3. So we do share 3 picks there. Then I go Bills -2.5 to go head to head with him there on one of them. And then the other one that I'm missing here is Seahawks +1.5 on Monday Night Football.
Yes.
Shout out to Jeremy. Jeremy, speaking of the Seahawks, are they on your card this week?
I have 3 bets, and 2 of them are the Seahawks. Now, the one that is not a Seahawks pick is the Chiefs, and I'm taking the Chiefs -9. They finally had a big blowout win against the Bears last week, and I think that they're just going to continue that trend and beat up on not as good teams. So I see the Chiefs covering at -9. Other 2 are Seahawks. I got at -2 today. The Giants are a bad football team right now. Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback. And also I have the Seahawks over 23.5. They have scored 37 points in their last 2 games. They didn't hit over 23.5 in their first game, but again, they're playing the Giants, who have let up so many points already this season. And I got that at -120. So 2 Seahawks bets already.
Sean Barnard.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm on the same page with you as a lot of these. The Ravens, as I mentioned, I think Vegas got that wrong, that they deserve to be the outright favorite. I'm taking the Ravens straight up there. Also, I'm with you on the Jacksonville Jaguars. I like the -3 line there. I think they do take advantage of the Falcons and take that down. I'm also with Jeremy on the Kansas City Chiefs at -9.5. I think this is the week the wheels fall off for the New York Jets, that Zach Wilson fully implodes as much as he kind of is already showing signs of it. I think this is the week where it becomes very clear they cannot have that guy under center. And to the same breath, the Chiefs are coming off a week where we saw them play their most complete game of football so far. I think this continues. I think this is a blowout. And on prime time, I think it's a statement for the Jets. Next up, I have the Vikings -4.5. I know they're 0-3. I know they've been bad, but I just feel like they have to find a way to start winning. So I am taking them against the Panthers as 4.5-point favorites there.
I lean that way.
Yeah.
I don't have it on the card, but I lean that way.
And lastly, the Cincinnati Bengals -2.5 against the Tennessee Titans.
Same here. I
thing.
don't have it on the card. Lean that way.
Yeah, I feel like another form of, I guess, the regression to the mean from the Bengals, if they're turning back into the contender we know them to be. They're a team that starts slow and gets it together by the end of the year every year. The Titans have not looked good. I think this is a prime opportunity for them to put forth a strong performance, and I do think the Bengals cover that 2.5 there.
let me touch on some games that neither of us or none of the three of us touched on. We have the ultimate toilet bowl. The Denver Broncos at the Chicago Bears. Do you have any leans here? Because I lean Denver -3.5. I think Chicago might be a different level of bad, even than the team that gave up 70. And then I also lean over here at 46.5. These defenses are both really bad.
Yeah.
It's hard to make a bet on this game though. But I lean Denver in the over.
Yeah, I'm staying completely away from it. I want to take the Bears. I want to believe the Broncos are that bad. I really don't have a feel. These are not teams that I think anyone's going to be watching under a careful eye for the remainder of the season. I feel like the Bears have to find something positive to take away, and I feel like this is an opportunity to get a win here. But yeah, there's going to be some ugly football. I don't see a lot of it getting very much red zone time.
Rams Colts. Anthony Richardson back in for this game.
Anthony Richardson anytime touchdown.
Are you on it? You want to add to the card?
I'll add that to my card. Yes,
right.
I like that. That might be the new Jalen Hurts there.
It might be. I know Sean Brace is big on that, and he said you got to bet it. My take on it. I'm a little worried with him coming back from injury that they'll tell him to take it easy.
Fair.
But it might be an auto bet. It might be something you just have to bet every week, no matter what. By the way, Colts, I'd like them to win the game. If I were to make a play, I lean Colts there. It's -1 towards the Colts. Colts win this game. They're 3-1. Like talking about a real team if you get to 3-1 there. So I do lean the Colts. I also lean the over there at 45. Steelers, Texans. This is a game I would not touch with a 10-foot pole. CJ Stroud is legit. CJ Stroud looks like the real deal. He looks like a top 15 quarterback right now.
Yeah.
Like right away. So hard for me to go against him. I do think the Steelers win. Would it shock me if it's by exactly 3 points? Like I think this game probably is like 24-21 Steelers. So I can't bet this one either way. I'd pick the Steelers if you force me to pick a winner there. But I'm not going to bet the spread. Another game we didn't touch on, Raiders Chargers. Chargers 4.5-point favorite. Looks like Brian Hoyer will be the quarterback there for the Raiders. Tough to evaluate.
Been a while since we've heard Brian Hoyer.
Yeah, they have a rookie too, and Aiden O'Connell looked really good in the preseason. I don't know why they wouldn't want to play him. By the way, any take there on Rams, Colts, Steelers, Texans, Raiders, Chargers? Any leans there on any of those three?
Colts -1 is probably what I feel strongest about. That I do think the Colts are quietly a competent football team. I don't think the Rams are that good, and I think the Colts. Anthony Richardson has straight up just been much better than I expected, and so I will lean the Colts as my strongest lean there. None of this is on my card though.
What are you making a face at me, Jeremy? What, you got Jansen behind me? Well, let's let him in. We're on radio. Jansen, what are you making faces?
Kentucky.
Mark Stoops.
Kentucky.
Jansen, you got any NFL picks for us?
Baltimore.
Love it.
Maybe. Yeah, I like Baltimore a lot. I don't like this week's card that much.
I love it.
Do you? It's a lot of plays where I'm just not feeling great. So I have Baltimore and Buffalo. Those are my two.
I'm also on Buffalo. We're also on Baltimore. So we're on the same plays there. I like to hear it.
That sucks for you.
All right. Hopefully my good luck rubs off on you instead of the other way around. We'll be positive. We're positive.
Let's go Kentucky.
Let's go Kentucky. Mark Stoops legacy bet.
Ooh, legacy.
It's a legacy bet from Mark Stoops. All right, Jeremy, it's time. I mean, the ladies are listening. They're waiting for my sultry love me flexy dulcet tones. So
Saucy.
Jeremy. Oh yeah. It's me, Mark Henry Jr. Back again to give you another love me flex. Yeah. Look in the same place we looked at. The same guy. Didn't deliver for us. He gave us 8.6. Kendrick, dude's a target machine. 11 targets, 9 targets, 5 targets. Mac Jones loves him. Kendrick Bourne, love me. You have to go off the board. It's outside the top 40. Hard to find. This year especially, there's been a lot of injuries. I feel like fantasy has been ravaged with injuries this year. It's been a rough start for the fantasy heads out there like myself. So let's start. You got donkey brains over there, Jeremy. Let's do the donkey brains of the week. Do either of you have anyone that comes to mind? Anyone you want to nominate? I've got 2 people.
Yeah, I think you're taking the strongest ones that it is the front of Philadelphia's mind right now. So if you want to throw that out to the start, I say lead with that.
I can lead with that. If you guys want to cook up any on your own, I will start with Chris Sims. Chris Sims is my number one donkey brains of the week.
How do we know you're not a donkey brain man?
How do we know, Chris Sims? We don't, because when you were in training camp with John Gruden, he told you had trouble processing information, and you've went on to become this QB guru. I put that in quotes. You ranked Jalen Hurts behind Kellen Mond a couple years ago. You've had a vendetta against Jalen Hurts for a long time. That's all fine. When you have one of the biggest platforms in football media next to Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk on NBC, the fact that they're putting a guy in there who says, kill the guy, kill the QB, headhunt, do all that stuff, when he was a terrible football player, has never been a good analyst, and now he's also going above and beyond what's acceptable to say about other human beings on live television. NBC should be disgusted. Pro Football Talk should be disgusted. And honestly, Mike Florio, bye-bye. I blocked him. I muted him. That dude's an absolute fraud. I used to read him a ton. I liked Pro Football Talk for 15 years. I've liked Mike Florio for a long time. PFT Commenter was born from, Mike Florio's website. It was the football blog at a certain point. He's become a little holier than thou to me lately, and he cancels people all the time. He wants to do all these things. Well, guess what, buddy? The guy you literally do a show with just requested that one of the superstars of the NFL get headhunted and quote unquote killed on the field. And you want to be you want to be holier than thou. You want to be Mr. Sanctimonious Mike Florio. And, I'm liberal too. So a lot of the things he thinks about and a lot of things he sticks up for and writes for and sticks up for the cause for, I'm with him. But you can't be Mr. Holier than thou and then sit by and excuse what your co-host did on the show that you had him with. It's disgusting.
The only thing I'll stick up for Florio in this situation is I did think he did a good job of attempting to kind of clean it up.
I guess.
And Chris Sims wanted no part of the lifeline that was handed to him. When he started to interject and be like, he doesn't mean that. Like, you don't mean that literally. Sims just basically doubled down on the take there. So I will give Florio a little more leash than you're giving him on the entire situation.
I'm being harsh because I like him. Because I did like him. So that's part of what the thing is for me.
The root of the issue is absolutely unacceptable. That you're spot on about that with Chris Sims. And it has been a vendetta against Jalen Hurts. This has been a constant thing for years now going on against him. So I think this is a spot on donkey brains.
Yeah. And then just one other one I'll throw out there that is nowhere near as serious. The San Francisco Giants organization for firing Gabe Kapler. Everyone wants to throw out like, oh, he was 78 and 81 this year, and he went 81 and 81 last year. Name players that he's coached. If you're a casual baseball fan and you can name more than 3 players that have been on the San Francisco Giants over the last 2 years, I got nothing to say to you because you can't. Those teams have been bad. And the fact that he won 107 games 2 years ago with one of the worst rosters in baseball that year, who was projected to, I think their win total was 73.5 that year. And he won 107, which is a franchise record. The fact that he got fired is a joke. And the fact that they're going to replace him with Bob Melvin, the Padres manager who just managed one of the most talented rosters of all time that had the AL Cy Young, 325 home run hitters, a top five bullpen, Josh Hader, who had the best season of closers this year, and like the second best fielding percentage, and they aren't going to go 500. They missed the playoffs. You want that manager and not the guy who showed time and time again that he'll do better than his roster every single year. The Gabe Kapler hate, and everyone's saying, oh, I mean, clearly he's a smart guy, but he just wears people out. What if his teams are just bad? Like, he doesn't wear people out. His teams are just not good. So it catches up to you eventually. You can't perform magic. So everyone wants to say that's the takeaway. The takeaway is you don't watch a manager win 107 games with a bad roster and say, oh, well, let's give him worse rosters because he did it with that. So why he'll do it with less? The Giants stuff, ridiculous to fire Gabe Kapler.
He'll find a job.
Yeah, he will.
Other teams notice what's going on with Gabe Kapler and how good of a manager he truly is. The casual fans' eyes, fine, whatever, think however you want. But Gabe Kapler is an incredible manager.
Yeah, no, you can't say it any better than that. So, San Francisco Giants organization.
How do we know you're not a donkey brain man?
It goes to those two. You guys got anyone?
Yeah, I do. I'm handing my donkey brains of the week to Pat Riley.
Wow.
And the reason for this is obviously Dame Lillard will be playing for the Milwaukee Bucks. We just spent months going over why he is destined to be a member of the Miami Heat. Each of us basically mentioning that this just feels like a missed opportunity by Pat Riley and the Heat front office. And this extends beyond Dame Lillard. Per Kevin O'Connor here, since Jimmy Butler was acquired in 2019, these are the guards that Miami Heat were interested in but did not land. Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, Bradley Beal, Chris Paul, Zach LaVine, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. I get it's heat culture. I get you find these guys out of nowhere, and they have gone to 2 finals in the past 5 years. So you got to cut them a little bit of slack. But it just feels like this air of confidence within Heat culture, within the Heat organization, that they're not really backing up or not really going for it when they have opportunities to and leaving things on the board. So I think they're overthinking things a little bit, not capitalizing on opportunities when they're there. And for that reason, I'll give Pat Riley my donkey brains of the week.
Before we get out of here, just real quick, Ray Davis on Kentucky right now, with 9 minutes left in the second quarter, has 9 carries for 190 yards.
Pretty good.
That is
That's not half bad.
outrageous.
Pretty
21 yards per carry, 9 or a touchdown. Yeah, I mean, that's unbelievable. Holy crap. Anyway, by the way, Penn State down 10-3 right now to Northwestern as a
Drew Aller.
Sean Bernard's on to
27-point
something.
favorite. I
Drew
know.
Aller.
He's on to something. Go on Twitter.
He might be right. Go check that out. Anyway, all right, that's going to do it here. We wrapped it up. I thought, we went a couple minutes late there. I'm happy we did. We hit on some football games. We fleshed out the donkey brains of the week. Did some Love Me Flexi. Thanks to Sean. Thanks to Jeremy. Thanks to TrillBro Dude. Thanks to everyone for listening. Tough Cover Country. Let's ride.
Introducing the revolutionary message.